Now I have to admit, for the huge anime/Disney fan I claim to be, it's almost embarrassing to admit I've only gone on the Ghibli hype train very recently. Studio Ghibli are often described as the Eastern Disney in terms of mysticism and animation and magic, and now I can really appreciate that and see why. But when I was younger, I may have taken the Disney comparison too literally, and was as a result left underwhelmed. I watched and found films like Howl's Moving Castle and Ponyo borderline unwatchable even. Now don't get me wrong, it certainly wasn't anything with the quality of the films, more so the actual content within them. They didn't grab me in the same way Tarzan and The Lion King did, and so brought up on these types of films, I ultimately found them hard to follow. Which is strange considering Ghibli's target audience is mainly young children, but you see, there's a reason for that. In fact, there's many reasons that myself as a child was left confused by Ghibli's films. To truly understand the films and fine details of Studio Ghibli, you have to look east. Today I'll be analysing the king of animation, Hayao Miyazaki, applying the auteur theory to Ghibli's man in charge, exploring his recurring trends and filmmaking staples he's left over the years. The now retired Hayao Miyazaki is often seen as the face of Studio Ghibli. Whilst other people write and direct the occasional film, the major ones that made the company as well renowned as it is today all come from the mind of this man. And even once he wasn't behind, his influence clearly remains. Today we'll be focusing mainly on Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, From Up on Poppy Hill, and his parting piece, The Wind Rises. Starting first, let's explain why a 10-year-old boy can find a Ghibli film confusing despite being part of the film's demographic. Japanese audiences have been brought up to interpret a different take on storytelling. Being a culture rich on the mythological and the archaic, Eastern audiences appreciate and tell different aspects of the story. For example, whilst a lot of Western stories have a fascination with the future, Japanese storytelling keeps strong links to the past, being proud of their heritage. Thus the fascination with samurai films and other period pieces. Morals similarly are instilled in children, just in different ways. Disney always bold the moral of the story at the end. We're all the same, or when you wish upon a star, or family, no one gets left behind. They spell it out indiscreetly. They also follow what we perceive here to be a traditional story, with a hero, villain, and a three-act structure. Japanese films tend to not only be light on dialogue, but more subtle all around. Ghibli, for instance, allowing the child audience to learn based on example rather than have it directly spoken to them. A strong example of a moral like this is Chihiro from Spirited Away. Now I love this girl and I'm going to come back to her later, but in this film of spirits and magic, there are no threats to conquer. I mean, there are definitely pseudo-villains and obstacles for our hero, but rather the Western resolution, which involves violence or action of some kind, Chihiro survives, frees Haku, and rescues her parents entirely with courage, initiative, and kindness. She learns her moral and returns a stronger person without having to resort to such masculine Western solutions as violence, or having what she's learnt spelled out to the audience. Miyazaki's biggest moral he encourages through his films, though, is that of conservation of the environment. Whilst never preached like some activist films do, so many films of his carry an environmentalist message. For example, there are many spirits and mythological creatures in Miyazaki's films, but almost all of them despise humans. And 90% of the time, that'd be because they are, quote, disgusting, lazy animals. In fact, when you look at the Ghibli library, we humans really kinda are. Now, an environmental save the flowers message isn't unheard of in this part of the world either, but it's important to remember Japan is also largely a countryside, and Miyazaki himself grew up in touch with nature. Spirits in Spirited Away come to the bathhouse to wash away human garbage, turning grand river spirits into disgusting grimers, which really is the magical equivalent of a penguin with a plastic ring around its neck. In Princess Mononoke, an industrial ironworks threatens to put the world and nature out of balance. The climax of this film shows humans finally going too far and resulting in things happening out of their control. A message that says that the earth is more all-powerful than us all, and our greed and consumption of our resources is only dooming ourselves. This also goes across to the magic of technology carrying destruction in The Wind Rises, and a school full of students trying to save their clubhouse from being demolished up on Poppy Hill. Totoro, the friendly name himself, can be interpreted as a symbol of environmentalism. Though the children's and the audience's eyes, Totoro appears like a fantastic friend. Totoro is about 10 times as big as Mei in this film, but she's never afraid of him because of his ambivalent and gentle nature. The first time Mei meets Totoro, she unreservedly climbs onto his belly, which can be seen as a distinctly human trait, invading and conquering this embodiment of nature instinctually. Now, of course, Mei is no malicious character, obviously, and it's her childish nature that reassures us the human touch isn't entirely lost with the earth. And as a result, Mei and this giant spirit of nature are able to interact as equals, in ways other Ghibli characters have more forcefully tried and failed. Going back to the Disney Ghibli comparison, the subject of love is one that is present in both, but used in different ways. Traditional Disney will have you believe that love can be found at first sight and that love is something to be won, not shared. Princesses, despite being the leads in their respective films, are often seen as the motivator and the reward for the hero's valiant efforts. Revelation, resolution. Disney films as of late have realised this old cliche themselves, but their solution is to give the females themselves masculine traits, which isn't quite the same. Love is present also in Ghibli's films, but not as invasive and cliché as Disney films would have it. Women are considered the prize, and if the characters in the film do share some kind of relationship by the end, it's only subtly worked in. Often it is left entirely ambiguous. In general, Miyazaki has the recurring trend of strong female leads, and the word strong in Ghibli terms treats intelligence and kindness as equal to strength. From strong Princess Mononoke to naive but plucky Ponyo, Ghibli seems to favour female leads. Why the hell not? Girls are awesome. But what makes characters like Ponyo, Chihiro and San truly independent? You know, other than badass magical powers and being brought up by wolves, that is. Well, it's the fact that they stand up to authority. Whether it's fighting against the state power of Howl's Moving Castle or the strict rules of the Spirit Bathhouse, by breaking free of the status quo, our protagonists discover a sense of self. This might be a given in Western films, but such anti-establishment resistance truly means something in Japan. The truth is, Miyazaki highly values the simplistic and wonder the childish perspective. Miyazaki has been quoted to admit he'll make films entirely on the sole basis to entertain. The simplicity of storytelling at its core is what gives Ghibli its unique charm. Hayao Miyazaki literally will decide one day to make a film with a certain young child or family member in mind, and then create a film he thinks they would enjoy watching. It's this close intimacy, yet also distance audiences watch it from, that makes the film so oddly compelling.
Because he does a lot of the animation himself. It's not all done on computers. There's a lot of drawing that goes into these movies. And then apparently he went back to Japan and he ran into the 10-year-old daughter of a friend and was interested in the fact that she seemed kind of indifferent to her parents, kind of lived in a world of her own. And that gave him the idea for this movie, where this girl drifts away from her parents and then has to find her way back again and question her own values.
A visual quirk that emerged at the start of Ghibli's films is a recurring fascination with air travel. The designs of aircraft alike to the joy of flight is a constant in this man's mind. Italian SC planes in Porco Rosso, Howl's Moving Castle, hell, even the cat bus from My Neighbour Totoro. A personal interest and hobby of Miyazaki's is brought to animation, and through dream sequences and fantastical flight sequences, we get to see aerial travel from his perspective and the magic he sees in it. While the desire for escape and the metaphorical idealism of taking to the sky seemingly holds universal appeal, for Miyazaki's generation, the sight of an airplane has a whole other layer of meaning. Having escaped the flames of American air raid at the age of 4 and being brought up in a nation at war, these memories have long since resonated through Miyazaki's career. As you may have noticed, many Ghibli films also centre on or around World War II. My Neighbour Totoro clearly takes place in a post-World War II town. From Up on Poppy Hill has a large subplot about the character's father dying at sea during an air raid, and The Wind Rises is a film entirely dedicated to this subject. The fact that his childhood was one of war and airplanes results in Miyazaki projecting his own values and personal idea of what childhood is into his films. suddenly making these magical fantasy films in fact extremely personal and more grounded in reality than you may think. Flight is the one recurring theme in these films that can turn nasty. We see flying contraptions treated just as fantastically as the spirits, magic and the supernatural. In many ways this take on flight is supernatural, but unlike those, this magical element has real life consequences. Vehicles that promise freedom can also be used to drop bombs and take lives. This idea is explored in Miyazaki's final film, The Wind Rises, where planes are the crux of a tragedy. The Wind Rises being Miyazaki's parting piece is obviously a very personal piece of cinema. The story of an optimistic aero engineer whose work is used by the military obviously refers to Miyazaki's own father, making this a sudden escape into hard-hitting realism. Now this is really peculiar because this can either be seen as the first and only time in Ghibli something magical was turned into something destructive, or the first time Miyazaki found something magical in something that is destructive. It can really go either way depending on your interpretation. And since the man is now retired and The Wind Rises left us with such an ambiguous and pleasantly underwhelming ending, your answer to that question is as good as mine. So, in summary, despite these films' target audience, the culture gap and the heart in his attitude to filmmaking can make a film specifically made for a 10-year-old girl relatable to the entire world. And as the master of animation now begins to retire, it's clear how much skill it takes to really do something like that. Let's hope the next generation are ready.
自分ももちろん自分の中にマイナスな部分や冷たい絶望的なものはたくさん持っていますが、絶望的なことや悲観的なことはいっぱい持っていますが、子供たちが見るであろう映画にそれを盛り込もうとはあまり思っていません。むしろどういうふうにすれば明るい映画が作れるのか、自分が明るい気持ちになれるのか、それを一生懸命考えます。